Never mind.
I'm
Okay,
just here
let's
to
see
talk
if
about
it's
updates in.
come on. Am I live? Apparently so. Alright, if you guys want to join in, here's the link. Okay, let's begin. Let me know if the stream is working. Network error. Ah, yeah, it's working. Great. Alright, so let's begin. So welcome to the Q&A and critique number 19. Thanks for being patient, guys. I highly appreciate the patience. Quite a bit. So here we are with Joey, JC, Nefarious, and Yush. Thanks for being here, guys. I know I'm a little bit late today with the notice and everything else, but I'm glad that you're here. So currently we have no topics on to discuss today. So today is going to be a lot more technical, as I do an exploration into the painterly coherent brush styles for a project I have in March 2022. Basically, it's a 6-minute music video for a DJ in Canada, and I'm going to use kind of like a oil-based painting with a comic book style animation, I guess you could say, in a cyberpunk type of world. So it's going to be fun. So earlier this week, I was working very hard on the research to get the concept looking right. And this research is basically here in my study folder, stylization coherence. And I've made 2 big major breakthroughs. So let's just compile the shaders and I'll show you. So Marty has to skip today as well, unfortunately. So he's been pretty faithful every week, so he can't make it. No problem, guys. Don't worry about it. I'll see you guys probably next week. So here we go. Here is my example where I have just a bunch of things. And as you can see, the textures scale the further away I move the camera to remain the same size throughout the entire scene. And there's a little bit of like a fade between everything. And also the sphere has no UV seams. That's something interesting as well. So that on the UVs, the material fades between each other a little bit, or they get painted in. But the texture remains the same size no matter how far in I zoom. Right? And even into the ball, and the textures kind of have, to some degree, a very similar coherence, I guess you could say. Only up to a certain point. So that's good enough to create, and also like I can rotate, and the textures on the UVs and everything work correctly. So that's kind of nice. So how did I get rid of the seams? If we look at this sphere, or cubic sphere, where there's blue lines, there are some sharp edges. And on those sharp edges is where the UV seams were, or are. And that's where I've used it to paint vertex colors. Let's take a look at the vertex colors here. Not the texture, sorry, vertex. And I use it to mark the vertex seams. So that's what I'm using to pretty much paint a vertex color. And then in the material, I use that as a system to blend one UV projection to the other. One is a UV projection based on generated vectors. So if I scale it, here you can see them. and the other is based on the UV of the actual object. So I can kind of like hide the seams using vertex colors. And then using those two coordinates, I use the Z depth of the camera with a logarithm. I think I'll stick it back to 2. I like it at base 3. So I use that to with a subtract for a stepped logarithm offset, and then just a normal stepped logarithm to drive the scale of the UVs. 2 of them, one on top of the other. And then from that, I use them to blend 2 textures on top of each other using a fade. So the fade is basically ping-ponging the value of the Z depth into the paint linear light that I'm using. This is kind of like to break it up a little bit so that I have a gradient that drives the mix factor of these 2 colors. So that's kind of an interesting technique that I figured out. So Lech is not here, but he helped me out quite a bit. So thanks, Lech, if you watch this later. Highly appreciate it. His basic tip was like to shuffle one of the logarithms. I could just use a subtract before I floor it. That was it. I spent 2 days trying to figure that out. Brute force math, not the best thing. So there it is. So what's the next step? Well, now I can use this system with a mixed color node, mix RGB, and I could use an object color, object info, use the object color, or just use Vertex Painting, Vertex color. And if I go into my texture painting, and instead of going in my texture painting, I could go into Vertex Painting and use that. Oops, let me select the object. There we go, Vertex Painting. And I can choose another layer. So for example, here in the vertex colors, I could choose the color of the objects. So I could say the object color. And I can use whatever I want. So for example, this red color. Oops, probably should use this. Paint the red color. I think it should be okay if it will have 2 of them. So if I paint this red, go back into my shading, I can use the color 2, which should be red, which is correct. If this is color 1, it would be black and white. There in red, just plug this in as the top layer. Put color, put this on top, and now I have red strokes. That's all I needed. And I could probably fit that back in, or use this instead of the other one, sorry, because this is both layers, the seams in the other. So now I have red painting. Wonderful, marvelous. Can add a bit more, you know, fully red, and this is great. So now I can paint my objects with the brush strokes without too much problem. Now let's go to the next step. Do you remember last week when I showed you guys the pre-processing? Oh, JC, you did help a little bit. Though I didn't quite understand your method. Though you were the hugest inspiration, to be honest. Actually, you were the basis of this, JC. Correct, actually. You were the biggest inspiration, not just Lech helping me figure it out. So your tree right here with the fraction and the floor, I just replaced the fraction system for my mixing to give me a bit more power. But this floor, power onto divide is exactly what I used, except for the position on the geometry. I was using UV instead. And instead of the view distance, I was using views at a depth. So JC, yes, you did this. Well, you were a huge inspiration for this. So thanks for that as well. And I guess that's how we made it work. So yeah, that's my fraction, like your fraction using into the mix here. Is basically a much more, I guess, slightly different version of it to do that. Alright, so now we need pre-processing. So here's my next theory. So basically, let me show you what I'm working on my to-do list. But basically, I have brushstroke coherence, the test screen distance, test the camera projection, and create layered UV distance. Done. Perfect. Now I'm looking at watercolor blobs and color patches. This can be done using the pre-processing, just with the correct shapes. And then in the brushstroke directions on characters, I need to make a prototype using flow maps. So that's something I need to work on. And the white specular hotspots is done in pre-processing. So yep, that's fine. The deformed to be blobby or stroke, good. Then composite back in, yep, that's all good. So now we need to figure out the next part. Paper edge stroke controls, textures and spotted volumetric spots, character red shadows. And I think there was something that I mentioned in was brush stroke texture. This is my next challenge that I'm going to work on today. So brush stroke texture is basically get the luminance, drive the bump, get the luminance from the material, drive the bump, and then from there in the preprocessor. And that's all I need to do, and then inject color again. Right, so the only things I have with the preprocessor is currently only using RGB, and that's all I have. So I have hue, saturation, and luminance. That's the only pre-processing data that I can get. So I need to work it through and figure that out. So let's go here. Let's quickly save that and go to my preprocessor, which is here, version 6. Let it compile for a moment. Go into the shading. I'll probably make a new scene. Gonna take a while to compile. Please forgive me. Yeah, JC, seriously, you saved me so much time with your little tree with the logarithm. I still don't know how logarithm works, so you really saved me a lot of time. Though I couldn't quite get as an amazing result as you did in the video. Because your result is almost flawless. Though I did get the stepped logarithm to blend nicely. Maybe because I'm using the bases 2 or 3. I don't remember. Alright, so here's the preprocessor. Let's take a look. Here it is. Here's my pre-processing node. And I'm gonna just quickly edit it to not have the emission shader. It's no longer necessary, just keep it as a color. And save some time. Delete that. Compiling power. There we go. So basically I have one layer with an incoming into refraction node, shaded to RGB. Then I use a blending system with a difference, and then I just have a refraction system here with a greater than to create the blend, so that I can mask 2 layers of refraction on top of the other. If I go out and I zoom into this, let it recompile for a second. Alright, so now I have a threshold. Okay, so that's roughness factor. I've got a lot of roughness on everything. I can change the hue. I can drop the roughness is based on a texture that I have here, which I can scale, make it bigger or smaller, and I can use it to drive the roughness of that refraction. So I can add a texture, and then using my threshold, at 0, like now I can like give me like a bit of a mask, so it doesn't work on absolutely everything. So it has to be relatively low. So there we go. I start to put a mask on different luminance values. Yep. So now I have 2 layers. I have the default hue, the default processing, plus the roughness. It's like a roughness mask, I guess you could say. So now I can change the saturation, drop the saturation. I can change the values of it, or drop the values completely. I got brightness controls, and I have contrast controls on top of that. And as you can see, it's relatively fast for 1 layer. That's nice. So now let's, how do I mix these 2 things together? So let's go back to my other scene. And let's work on something. And I need a new brush texture. So because this is not the one I need. So let's just grab a new texture. I'll call this one brush. Why not? Let's go into my brush material library. My textures. Art and paintings. Nope. Thanks to the Blender Pirate for a lot of these collections. Some of them are my own though. Oh, JC says, his result is good because the texture is already an octave noise. So scaling it up by 2 is the same as removing the lowest detail octave and adding another higher detail octave. Oh. The more complex texture, it would be harder. You can improve yours by creating a second octave for the paint texture so the transition won't be jarring. Makes sense. Hello, Joms. Welcome. Okay, so how do I make a pre-processing scene? Well, first things first, you gotta grab the camera and find it. So, where's my camera? It should be probably confused. I don't know where I put it. Let's just grab it from the outliner. So here's my camera. I still can't see it. Where's my camera? Oh yeah, I have it hidden in the viewport, sorry. Right, so I grabbed my camera. Here's my camera. Nice and big. I just had it hidden in the overlays here. Okay, so I have this huge camera. Let's make it a bit smaller. Why not? And what I need to do is I need to create a plane. Copy the location and the rotation of that plane. Move it in the local space. Just put it somewhere in front in my clip that I need. And that's going to be my pre-processing plane. Then I just parent it to the camera. So keep transform. So if I go into the camera mode, all I see is this plane. Perfect. Well, not really. We should see through it. So you go to shading. Go into the camera view. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this the pre-processor. Cool. And I'm going to save time, and I'm going to import one that I already made. Or I could make a new one from scratch. What do you guys want? New one from scratch? Or should I just quickly import one? you guys think?
I don't know. How long does it take to make it from scratch?
All right.
Import it.
So I guess, well, I'll just do the basics of it. So I get my camera, no, not my camera data, sorry, light data, which would be this one, Nope. Don't remember the name of it. Yeah, tangent, texture coordinates, object info, particle info, light path, layer weight here, info, geometry. There we go. So I get my geometry node, and then I get a refraction, BSDF, and I use the incoming vector onto my refraction, and I gotta turn on in screen space refraction, yep. And then I gotta make sure the material also has screen space refraction turned on. Gotta make sure it casts no shadow. And now my roughness turns on, and all of a sudden it's nice and blurry. Oh, the IOR needs to be, I think, 1. I don't remember. So that's the basics of it, pretty much. And then you can just play around with these two things, I suppose. Is it quick to do from scratch? Well, I need to remind myself how to do it, so let me just quickly import it. I made it as a node group already. Coherent, scale, ng, processing layer, append. And now let's add it. Here it is, ng, pre-processing layer. So let's go zoom in. Incoming IOR is at 2. And the other one is IOR at 2. Then we use shader to RGB. So let's go back up. So move the IR to 2. And we need 2 of them. So we select the first one and the second one to get that layer effect. And then we use shader to RGB. This is the important one. Shader to RGB gives us a bit more finesse into the way things work. And also the camera probably doesn't have depth of field. There we go. So as you can see, it's getting like, it changes the roughness of I guess you could say the blurriness of the image based on like a certain roughness that you have inside of the screen. There it is, nice and good. And here's the shader to RGB. So one layer is going to be the clear layer with another shader to RGB. So we have this sharp layer. And now we're going to get some luminance. So we're going to get a brightness contrast add-on. Sorry. And also I want to make just separate the colors. The reason being is I want to do it per channel. So red, green, and blue, because I'm going to use the red, green, and blue to drive different things, but just the luminance. Okay, so now I have this, so I can use this to drive my bump map. So here's an interesting thing. We're just going to use a typical bump, throw it into the height, and then we're going to just plug this into my this is just a test, so plug this into my normal, then preview from here. So it's going to be white, but it's going to have a texture on it. Wait till it compiles, and then we can see. Hello Noah, how you doing?
Hey.
How have you been?
I've been pretty good. The sickness finally came over.
The sickness came over?
Yeah, it's over for me.
Oh, good. So you've been through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I got it in April.
Hmm.
It was a little rough, but okay.
Lasted me 2 weeks.
Yeah, but about the same for me too. With 1 week extra for just recovering, kind of.
Mhm.
But good, I'm glad you're okay.
Thanks.
One of my animator's brother died from it.
What? From the Delta variant?
No, the variant before.
Oh.
Also
Oh
in
my
April.
god.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay, so it works, kind of. The overscan is not very good though. But like if I zoom in, I can see that there's some kind of bump happening from that color channel. So if we mix in which kind of gives me kind of this brush stroke, so we can change the distance. Make it look like, there we go. Even less, yeah. Oh, that's nice. There you go. So there we go. I got my first kind of brush strokes. Let's make it even stronger. Alright, so that's one type. And if we bring in the other color system, the other as the base color, the clear one, or one of the clear layers, let it compile. There we go. Now we can see there's a tiny bit of a normal brush stroke onto the actual image. Okay. It's one of them. One way of like extracting some type of luminance. So what we can do on top of that is we can use some math add, and we can add all of the channels together just to get an interesting effect. Anyway, this is my experimental phase, so I don't actually know what I'm doing with the normals. Nefarious is writing. Oh yes, Link has an add-on to review. There we go. Let's just take a look at the black and white image. So that means some strokes are stronger than others. It's got I guess we can remap it, I suppose, to bring out different types of texture detail, whatever we want. We could do comparison or an kind of an XOR type of feel so that we can clamp it or exaggerate different aspects of the luminance. So if I grab the cube and then go back into the material, I'm getting this paint texture nice in real time, straight off the bat, projected onto the bump of the material.
Now, I wasn't here in the beginning part of this tutorial, but so did you use an image to get the paint strokes, or did you use math nodes?
Bit of both. This is a raster image. Like here, you can see I have one texture in the painting here. It's just a painting texture with like perpendicular strokes. But the way that I'm making it blend together, it does require some math at JC. It was very clever to figure out, and then I used an two-stepped logarithms and a ping pong to create the coherent blend. So this was what I figured out on earlier this week. So as you can see, like I zoom in and out of the file, and the texture blends back into itself into a big size again, right? I'm not doing the correct octaves right at the moment. I think it's because it should be at 2. Yeah, it's actually at 2. I think is a more correct octave. So if I go back here, you can see that like the size of the widget. Keep notice of the size of the widget, then the size of the texture. Yeah, kind of sticks to the size of the widget. The brushstrokes tries to hold on to the size of the widget. So as you can see, like with the distance and things like that, like here's from the top view is really evident. Yeah, it just blended out and became its own size again, except for the world material, which I need to fix. Anyway, so that's the coherent stylization based on UVs. And on top of that, I have like this color system on top of a UV to bring out some color. And to hide the UVs as well. I need to make sure that the color is not quite as strong. And just hide that a little bit. Now I can like color the objects based on Vertex Painting or another texture, no problem. And I can hide the UVs using another system. So as you can see in the object here, if you look nice and closely, here you can see it from the painting that there is something going on here. Well, that's the hint of what I'm using to hide the UVs. I'm just using the crease to drive the UV selection to paint the vertex colors. And to do that, let's see if I can remember. It's based on weight painting. You go to Vertex Painting. On your brush panel, you have a couple of tools. Vertex color from weight. So that's the one operator you want to first do. So in edit mode, if I have, for example, this edge and this edge, these edges, and I go into my properties panel and turn on the crease. Then I go into weight painting. I go to weights, and I can, what was it? Don't remember. Weights. Mirror, invert, clean, normalize. Transfer weights. Nope. Damn, I forgot. Gotta go to my weight group. Oh, wait. Now I remember. Sorry. Go back to edit mode. I go to select. And I select similar seams or creases. Select the crease. So whatever has a crease. Or I select this one. Sorry. Select similar crease. Nope. Damn it. Sorry. Fail there. Select sharp edges, non-manifold, edge loops, edge rings, boundary loops, sharp edges. Oh, this is the bevel weight. Oh, I'm using the bevel weight. Select face region, seam, bevel. There we go. I wasn't using sharp, I was just selecting bevel. I was just marking these seams with something, anything, as long as you can select them. They could even be your UV seams, whatever. So if I select them, I go back into my vertex group and I assign it to the UV seam group, a new group. And then from the UV seam group, I can go back into my, as you can see, here they are assigned. I can blur them or whatever, however I want. And now, so here's my smoothing, so I could like on purpose smooth them out a little bit, or not. And I'm good. And then from there, in my UV seams, I decide to go back into vertex paint mode. And this is where I start to use the vertex color from weight. I select the correct vertex color group, which would be this one. Which if I go back into this red, which is this one here, let's just fill everything black at first. And then switch it to white here. Saturation done. Okay, and now, boom. Hit the button, vertex color from weight, which is underneath paint. And I just painted my vertex colors, which Eevee can read. And I use this as my mask for the UV seam, which is right here. That's how you hide your UV seams, by using masks. And so you have one of them based on generated UVs, and you have the other one based on your normal UVs, so that I have some UV control on my brush strokes. It's kind of nice. It's a bit more effort, but it gets the job done. Okay, so let's go back to my pre-processing. And now in my pre-processing view, I can see the image. It's nice and dark. So if it's too dark, what I can do is I can like add in a hue, saturation, and luminance into one of the layers here. So let me just reorganize everything. And let me just organize this into be like a frame of some kind. Frame. Or you can just press Ctrl J or Alt J, Ctrl J. Right, so this is the color. So now I can add in some value. Or whatever I need. I can change the saturation. And I can change the hue. All live, real time. And in my normal, I can also, I guess you could say, go into my displacement to kind of exaggerate the normal using the same scale height. Put that into displacement. This would work for cycles with adaptive displacement mostly. Eevee doesn't have this. But once it compiles, there we go. Kind of just makes things pop a bit more, just a little bit. You can also just increase the strength or the distance of the... But this is taking too long to compile, so I'll just remove it. Nope, still compiling. Oh, you gotta go, James. Thanks for being here. There we go. That's my normal view. I can now change this distance. As you can see, it's like increases like the height or the distance of the material. I can change the strength of it. I think one is, we'll make it less. Good enough. And that's what I'm using to drive the bump. So there's a paper that someone gave me the other day. Let me just grab the paper of how to bring out normals from paint strokes. It does use artificial intelligence. So I'm not sure I could like figure this out, but let's take a look. So basically they have their brush strokes from the input image, and then they synthesize the normals and re-render what's underneath it by removing the lighting of some kind. So first things first is we don't need to remove the lighting. We already have the color. We just need to synthesize the normals a bit better to bring out a rendered surface properly. They have a training set of a relit albedo with the black and grayscale, and then they extract the normal from the grayscale. So what I need to do now is basically do the same pretty much. I need to create a new normal map from the grayscale to make it work. So I guess what they're doing is their training models are a lot more complex than what I can probably figure out, so I probably have to brute force it myself. So I'm probably going to use the two channels and shift them a little bit, RGB, and use the luminance channels to create kind of that normal that I need, a lot more defined than what I have right now. So I haven't finished reading it, but it's kind of an interesting concept that I like already. So first things first, so we have our red, green, and blue. And we have a texture on the ground, for example. Black and white. And now let's get some edge detection. How do we do that? I think it is with compare. We'll just grab the red detection. There it is. So we got some edges using the compare node. So we can increase the epsilon with the red edge node. So this can give us the edges of the paint. That's nice. Let's check it out with the green one. So here's the green one. Green one probably needs a bit less epsilon. Well, it depends on the final color and look. Then we have the blue. Oh, they're comparing on top of each other, sorry. So there you go. Cool, so we got some edges. That's great. Let's combine them together, I suppose. So we'll make one here, one here, and one there. We'll just collapse them. There we go. They're all added together. And now we have like these rough edges, I suppose. So let's bring out another value node. We'll use this plugged into the epsilon of all three at the same time, 3 channels. We can fine tune each one to however we want. But this can give us a nice, interesting texture. Okay, so now we have compare. Then we have ceilings and floors. And we can also round them out or do less than or greater than. Now let's get my less than, which will clamp some brightness. So the light colors are now clamped off. Or I only see the values less than or higher than. So that's kind of inverse. I could use this as a mask for different types of strokes, I guess you could say. What else can I use? Smooth minimum. Now the smooth minimum is kind of a similar thing, but now I have an actual cap. So at certain values. So anything less than this point would be that color. And then they start getting clamped off, which is good. It's candy. I could use this to flatten things out. So if I check out my smooth maximum, it's clamping out the top ones as well. So now I can add them together. So let's get another one just for fun. Throw that in. And we'll turn this to the smooth minimum. There's my minimum, clamp it out. Keep the distance the same. We'll just keep them relevant at the same threshold from 0.3. And then we can subtract them from each other. So subtract them from themselves so that they all sit on the same level. Whoops, not too much. There you go, so it's not too dark. Or not too light, sorry. So that the black is black. So subtract by 0.3, the level that it's pulling out from. Do the same from the other one. And now that I have that sorted, wait. Oh, this one need to be added because it's the inverse. So now we can like combine them together. So now we can like subtract one from the other. Like, so that we have a slightly flatter texture of everything. Alright? So here's before. The darks and whites. But now here it is after. Now everything is relatively grey. That's what we wanted. Kind of give us a bit of there are still some black spots, but that's from the black paint. So I guess at the final texture I need something that's a lot more uniform. But now I could use this inside of my comparison now and use that as a bump instead, so that everything is a lot more uniform. So that's one way of doing it, so that my texture is a lot more uniform. So let's give it a go, yeah? Let's plug this into a new height bump map. Plug it into the normal. Go into this again. Now let's take a look. Now it's compiling. All right. So let's take a look at the texture. It is a lot more uniform over all of the brushstrokes. Beautiful. That's exactly what I wanted. And if I add in this edge system, so let's just shuffle things over with my trusty shuffle brush. Where is it? Relax brush. Woo! Just shuffle things around a little bit so that things are a bit easier to understand, I suppose. Yeah, move this over here. Cool, what a great brush. Nice. And so now this is nice and clear. We can go here and we could add the edges that we created here onto the other, so that our normal map has some nice paint edges where we compared. As you can see, now it actually looks a lot more like little strokes along the edges of the paint. Just rotate this for a bit more effect. Yeah, make it smaller. Turn on the correct UV attributes. Yeah. Turn that off and rotate. There you go. So if we look closely at the edges there, we've got a bit more. Go back to my PBR. We just added in the paint edges, plus we added in a more neutralized high and low of the paint, so there's a bit more uniform paint texture. And lo and behold, you can see the paint texture, and on top of that, there's a slightly bit more bump. Probably we should invert it. Bump it to 2. Wonder if cycles would be faster to preview things. I will use Eevee as a render engine. There we go. And now the paint strokes are pulling out okay. As you can see on the edges here, this is from the refraction node. To get rid of them, all you gotta do is go into refraction settings and turn off your edge fading, and that fixes it. So your pre-processing is now full screen. Since you're not going to be using refraction in the rest of the scene, then you can turn it off and you're good. So let's zoom in again. It's kind of working, I suppose. Kind of pixely. But now we have some painting strokes, or texture from the strokes to some degree. Based on the UV, this should help out on the shadows as well. If this is the material based with shadows, so let's turn on the PBR. Even if the material, whoa, where'd my stuff go? There we go. Need to just reframe this. Go back to this. Alright, so what happened to my preprocessor? Where is it? Wait, I still have it plugged on. There we go. Whoa. Okay, something's wrong. That's weird. Why is one lighter than the other? Oh, that's why. And why is this one darker than the other? Take a look at my preprocess. Value, really dark, saturation, hue, WSDF, okay. Keep this pinned. Oh, it's the lighting and the shadow. Alright, so here's the bump of the material. The edges of the paint a little bit. Probably drop the saturation. The shadows. This is what I'm interested in. Like, how does it look when the paint is in the shadow? So where's my sphere? There it is. Okay. So in the shadow, we're not getting enough luminance. So this is where I need to use the comparison node to bring out the bump. And also, the plane goes into the shadow. And that's not a good thing. So I need to use emission as well. Throw that into my emission color. But I'm afraid if I use emission, it's going to destroy the bump. Oh no, it's okay. Obviously we can make it a little bit affected by the light. There we go, so you can see some of the bump, but it doesn't go too dark into the shadow. Full screen. That's weird, why does it disappear on full screen? Must be the sampling. Bizarre. EV sampling. What am I at? 16. Let's go to 32. Turn off denoising. Ambient occlusion. Keep it on. Bloom? No. Yeah, I think it's the samples. Now I can see it a bit bigger. Nope, it's not the samples. The chat. Back into the view. I wonder if it's the... Yeah, let's render a frame, see what happens. My test grid. Probably should hide that. Huh. Doesn't quite work how I wanted it to be. Alright, the other option is instead of using the normals, we can just use like a multiply node and we can fake it. Alright guys, well, I've been here a while now, I suppose. Nearly an hour. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Today wasn't interesting because there was no questions, just a nodal exploration since we were in a procedural nodal server, so quite fitting today. Thanks for hanging out till the end.
Yeah, it looks awesome, Trace.
Well, kind of. Still compiling. There it is. Using this. Put that onto my mission as well. Another thing is we can do is that we can blur one of the refractions based on that value with the roughness. So we can loop back, put that into the roughness. Let's see how crazy it goes. Let it compile. The problem with refraction nodes is it takes a while. Woohoo! Now it's all bleeding the colors in an interesting way. So obviously, like if you want like the normal color multiplied onto the other, let's just turn it off. Recompiling. But that's the basic gist of using preprocessors. Once it compiles, it runs real time, but until then, you're stuck with waiting for Eevee to compile. Maybe things could be previewed. I don't know if Cycles is the same though. Stick that. Oh, and this bright specular lights is kind of interesting. Just turn this one off. Alright guys, so thanks for your time. I'll end the stream here. Hopefully it worked this time. See you guys.